In 2006, I opened a storefront on Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn, one of the centers of New York's Arab community, as part of a project called Return. The storefront operated from October until the end of December of that year. The story begins with my mother's family, who were forced to leave Baghdad in 1946, eventually emigrating to New York. This photo shows my grandfather, Nissim Isaac David bin Aziz, with his family, so large that they extend beyond the frame provided by the desert oasis backdrop. This next photo shows my grandfather on the right, his younger brother Salim on the left. Beginning in the 1920s, my grandfather owned and operated an import-export company called Davisons Co. When the family came to New York in 1946, he reopened the company, and his first parcels were sent between Iraq and the United States. The company closed in 1963, and my grandfather died in 1975. In the fall of 2004, I participated in an exhibition in New York City, where artists were invited to produce site-specific works within local commercial spaces and storefronts. At the time, I'd been reading media accounts about the progress 1 year after mission accomplished. The reports were, of course, pessimistic, and served to expose the Iraqi infrastructure that had fallen apart as a result of the war, including that of shipping and trade. In response, I decided to reopen my grandfather's import-export business, however modestly. I became the new proprietor and created a Dropbox, pictured here, that featured the original typeface and layout of my grandfather's letterhead. I used the project budget to provide free shipping for Iraqi citizens living in the U.S., inviting them to send an object of their choice, free of charge, to any address in Iraq. When I initially proposed Return as a storefront to Creative Time, in addition to the gesture of shipping items to Iraq, I also wanted to try importing something clearly labeled Product of Iraq. I had wanted to investigate this new facet since August of 2004, when I discovered a large red can of date syrup at Sahadi Importing Company on Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn. Sahadi's was one of the stores my grandparents frequented when they first arrived in New York. When I brought the can of date syrup to the cash register, the owner, Charlie Sahadi, said, "Your mother's going to love this. It's from Baghdad." I looked at the label, which was clearly marked Product of Lebanon, and that's when he told me that the date syrup is processed in the Iraqi capital, put into large plastic vats, and driven over the border into Syria, where it gets packed into unmarked aluminum cans. It then crosses the border into Lebanon, gets a label, and is exported to the rest of the world. From 1990 until May 2003, this was one method that Iraqi companies used to circumvent UN sanctions. When I asked why it was still being practiced in August of 2004, more than 1 year after sanctions had been dropped, Charlie replied that prohibitive customs and security charges were to blame. Importing products directly from Iraq was just too much of a risk. It would be bad business. After this impromptu first lesson on importing, I decided to further investigate the history of Iraqi exports beyond oil. The date syrup led me to dates, which were legendary in Iraq, renowned as the best in the world, with a yield of over 600 different varieties. In the 1970s, Iraq was the world's chief exporter of dates, and dates accounted for their second largest economy after oil. At its peak in the mid-1970s, the Iraqi date industry listed over 30 million date palms in the country. By the end of the Iran-Iraq War in 1988, this number had been halved to about 16 million. At the end of the 2003 invasion, only 3 million remained. Together with Sahadi Fine Foods, whom I was able to get interested in my bad business as good art, I signed a deal with an Iraqi company, Al-Fares, to import 1 ton of Khistawi dates from the city of Hilla. It was the first such deal in more than 25 years. Notice the area where it lists me as their client under the name Michael Daoud Rakowitz. Many companies asked me what my grandfather's surname was before he fled Iraq in 1946. I told them it was Daoud. More than one replied, "Welcome back, Daoud," and many of them referred to me by that name instead of Michael. The dates were to be packed in boxes clearly labeled Product of Iraq. When I told Athir, the general manager of Al-Fares, that this would be the first product on U.S. store shelves in over 3 decades to list Iraq as its country of origin, I added that if he and his company had anything to say to the American consumer, They could say it with the design of the box. And the result is wonderfully crazy. Amid all the swaying palm trees and these bunches of dates that seem to be hovering mysteriously in midair, there's an art history lesson. On the top left is a photograph of the Lion of Babylon. The caption reads simply, Babylon, Iraq, genuine lion. On the lower right, another photo, Ishtar Gate, reconstructed. The original gate was taken by a foreign power, the Germans, in the early 20th century, and reconstructed brick by brick in the Pergamon Museum in Berlin. The lion still remains. On the right flap, they clearly list product of Iraq, and even go so far as to print the flag. And they were very excited when the boxes came back from the printer. I received multiple photos by email showing the box with its cover on a table, the box with the cover off on another table, the box on a chair, etc. With the business transaction came communication, and with that communication came friendship. When I first corresponded by email with Athir, he explained to me that my fascination with dates must come from my mother's side of the family, as it said that every Iraqi has a date in their genes. Athir wrote that in the first moments of life, it's traditional for the parents to place a date in the mouth of their newborn baby, so its first taste of life is sweet. Partway through our transactions, I learned that Athir and his family had to leave Iraq because it was becoming too dangerous. His wife and kids had witnessed a man being shot right in front of them while they were at a restaurant. Suddenly, the conversations Athir and I were having became that of two exiles. He would tell stories of Iraq, of what it looked like, what Men al Sema tasted like, how thick the trunks of the palms get. At one point he realized how he was speaking, and he sighed. "Do I sound like your grandfather yet?"